Yeah, alright, because you've asked, I decided I would make a quick demo video of the Godwah. This wah incorporates all the common mods that you'll find from Stinkfoot and plus others. We'll start with the basics. Here's a simple schematic you can easily quickly download online. The wahs include adjustment for this gain resistor here, which is for your input level, the gain of the BJT transistor, adjustment on the fly for the Q factor resistor, like the 535 Q wah that Dunlop makes. Well, basically it's just a knob that controls the resistance of that particular resistor. Here, this is the sweep capacitor. My particular classic wah came with the 0.001 microfarad or the 10 nanofarad. Some come with a 22 nanofarad. The base wah, the only difference is between that schematic and Gen wah is it uses a 68 nanofarad. And of course they paint it white and charge you $100 rather than the 60. So we've made that selectable as well, and it selects 4 different capacitors: 10 nanofarad, 22, 47 and 68 nanofarads. Used variable resistors, potentiometers that go from 0 to 100K, 0 to 500, and 0 to 100K as well for that one. Here it is on the wah. You'll see I've just here's my dial. You go from 10 nanofarad, 22, 47, 68. A 3-position switch here. This selects actually the different inductors. I've got a separate board I've put in, which I'll show you shortly, and I've got a red phasal. Oops, get this so it comes in not so blurry. A yellow phasal and a green phasal. And what I did was I've got, once you kick the wah pedal on, the LEDs light up. That activates the battery for the entire circuit. And I use the green for the halo, the Whipple halo, yellow LED for the yellow phasal, red LED for the red phasal. Pretty slick there. And here's the variable resistors. The little silver marks I've got that I can dial to, those are your exact factory settings for each one. And I've labeled it I for input resistance, G for the BJT gain, and Q for the inductor Q factor. And right now, if I line all the dials up to the corresponding mark I've engraved on here, it'll put it right straight at the factory setting, at the 68K, the 470, and the 33K. And this will allow you to adjust them to what, suits your sound the best. And you can select whichever, inductor you feel sounds the best. So when your other guitar player is telling you that your wah needs to have the yellow phasal or the red phasal to sound like him and be, cool like so-and-so, you can say, well, hey, guess what? My pedal can do that. Have a nice day. Over to the insides. Oh, yeah, she's a good mess, isn't it, here? So you can see I've added a board. Got my red phasal, yellow, and the Whipple halo. And my strand of wiring that heads over here to the variable resistors, those are your 3 resistors I've taken right out of the board and then just paired them off with, a pair of wires in and out. Moving up here, here's a 4-position the 4-position switch, the rotary switch with each one of the capacitors, 10, 22, 47, and 68 nanofarad, and then a 3-position rotary dial switch that selects between each one of the LEDs. The switch that actually came in mine was a 2-pole, which I didn't really, have to change because I could still select true bypass as well as keeping it so the effect operates. But I went with a 3-pole so that way I could have one row that operated true bypass, one row that activated the battery, and one row for the standard operation. I wanted it so that even if you left your cord plugged into your input jack, that it wasn't going to activate and drain the battery. So if you're a nincompoop like I am from time to time and forget to pull your cord, you don't have to worry about the battery going dead because it's not in the loop at all once it's shut off. And again, you'll know it's off because none of the LEDs for the inductors will be lit. The only other thing I did add as a permanent fix is I got a 10 picofarad capacitor that goes from the input to ground to block out any radio frequencies, because at time to time, you know, I'd either get talk radio or some country station or something that I really didn't want to have come through my amplifier, you know, especially during a set. And let's see here, we will put you off, then we'll plug her in and you can see that she operates. Alright, here we are all hooked up. I've set everything to factory settings just as if I would have gotten her from the box. Ironically enough, I never even played it when I got it out of the box. I just tore her apart and started rebuilding. For the rig that I'm playing a B52 412 cab, B52 AT100, all tube head. And it looks like I got a whole mess of stuff going on in here, but really we're just talking about a Hush Rocktron noise gate, an EQ that I have very little adjustment on, just dropped slight bit in the 1K area, and then my Rocktron G major processor. The only thing that I have going on with this is just a touch of reverb and the EQ, but there's no setting on it. So right now this is pretty much what I run for my standard tone. Pretty much play speed metal. Guitar I'm using, let's see here, we'll flip you around. It's just a Jackson Soloist, tuned to about E flat. It's a USA model, picked up back in the 90s. So let's try to find a place to set you, and hopefully you can hear it. And being that I play metal, that's the type of thing that I am going to play. So, and I'm going to try to play the same phrasings, the same licks every time I make an adjustment, so that way you can kind of hear. I'm not going to do anything super fancy or super flashy. Things are going to be slow. They're going to be pentonics, just so that way you can actually hear the subtle differences. Quite honestly, between the red and the yellow, I really didn't hear much of a difference. But you go from the phasals to the Whipple, or the Halo, whatever you want to call it, yeah, there's a huge difference there. Okay, we'll get you recording here. There we are. We're going to start out the factory settings with the red phasal. Sorry. Here we are. We're going to play E pentonics. Now we're going to go to the yellow. Now we're going to Mr. Whipple. I still like the green better. The yellow's a little sharper, but a little touch nasal, more nasal to it than I guess the red does. But I think the green, the Halo, the Whipple inductor, is a little smoother sounding. We're going to put her back to the factory red. We're at the 10 nano in the capacitor, and then I'm going to sweep through each one at a time. Now we're going to go to the 22, which is, I believe, the factory setting one for the Jimi Hendrix model. Gives it a little bit more bass to it each time. Each time we increase the capacitor. Now we're going to the 47. It's going to get a little more bassier. and it's going to sound like you've almost went from the bridge to the neck pickup, but it gives it kind of that old creamy blues feel to it. Now we're going to throw her all the way to the 68 nanofarad, which is what comes in the bass wah. So if you like the tone of that, you can just buy the $100 bass wah or buy a classic and just trade the one capacitor for 5 cents. Okay, now that's going through each one of the inductors. We did that from the factory basic settings and to the each one of the capacitors. I'm going to put her back at factory, the 10 and the red phasal. Now I'm just going to be playing the chord or an E note with the toe up, and I'm going to adjust the input resistor. As I increase it from factory, you're going to hear that it's going to start to cut itself right out because you know, you can higher the resistance, you're blocking the signal. So I guess in a way you could use it to clean up your signal if you wanted. As we decrease it from factory, you're going to start hearing that you might get a little touch more gain, but not enough. Usually I actually run it about halfway between 0 and factory, so I guess it's about 30K. Now we're going to adjust the emitter resistor. Remember, we're starting with 470 ohms. The pot I have only goes to 500, so really as you increase it, with 10% resistance error, you're typically not going to hear any difference. But as we decrease it, we will start to get a little bassier and a little more throat to it, and a little more gain, almost a touch of fuzz in there. So we're going to go less than factory. As you can hear, you're starting to almost get that tone again, kind of like I'm almost switching to the neck pickup, or sounds like I'm actually muting the string harder, which in fact I'm not. That's just what the BJT, the transistor itself, is actually doing. Typically I like it pretty close to factory. When I switch capacitors, whoops, sorry, I don't need the BJT to add any more depth. Now with the Q factor resistor change, we'll listen to that as we increase. As we increase, we're going to end up just cutting it right out. As we decrease, we end up just kind of bypassing everything. So there is a sweet spot. That's as we increase it. We'll increase it full, and you're going to hear it's going to cut out. And there we lost it. Bring her back down. So, if you're playing leads and say you have delays or reverbs or even a chorus and you want to use the wah, you might want to select one of the capacitors, a higher value one, so you get more bass tone. If you're using just the wah by itself, maybe you want to keep it at the 10 or 22 nanofarad range, so that way you have that high end to cut through. Myself, I prefer right about here. We're using the Whipple Halo inductor, and I usually use right around the 47 nanofarad. But usually I don't always use the wah for lead. Sometimes I use it as effect for some of the background rhythm structure. usually just layered underneath another guitar, and it gives it a nice dark tone to it. Now as I switch, you hear and you notice those little pops and boops. As you're playing, you're not going to hear that. Right now all you're hearing is each capacitor discharging and the inductor's trying to charge up. I mean, once you set it to play, you know, you're not going to hear those pops. I mean, but who's going to be switching in the middle of playing? So there you go. There's your demo video, and well, the family says hi. There we are.